Welcome to the More to Story podcast. I am glad that you are here, and I'm excited by this show. It is one of the most distinct shows, unique, fun shows I think we're going to have in a long time. So I'm excited to introduce our guest to you in just a second. But before I do that, I want to make sure you know about a few things. First of all, this podcast comes to you from Wesley Biblical Seminary, where we are training trusted leaders for faithful churches. And that happens through a variety of programs, through undergraduate, graduate degrees, and Doctor of Ministry program. Just in the month of September, we are starting our Wesley Institute, which is a lay initiative, which is 9 months of in-depth teaching in 2 tracks. One is in the Bible and one is in theology. We walk through every book of the Bible and major theological topics with seminary professors working through this. We would love for you to invest in this. This is a great, important program called the Wesley Institute. And you can find out more about that at our website at wbs.edu. And also, I'm thankful for Bill Roberts, who's a financial planner who sponsors this podcast. You can find out more about him and his ministry, the way God has led him to serve people by thinking about their retirements and planning for that well. You can find him at williamhroberts.com, and you can find a link for that in my show notes. And finally, the last thing I want to make sure people know is that my study of Jude called Contender is out. And as people are getting ready for fall Bible studies, maybe your small group has come back together for this season after the summer. This is a 6-session series on the book of Jude, those 25 verses, and it has over 5 hours of content, discussion guides. It's just set up for your small group or your Sunday school class. I'd love for you to check that out. So you can go to my website at andymillerthird.com. That's andymillerii.com. So here we are. Today's show, I am so glad to welcome into the podcast my friend. We went to seminary together, Jesse Joyner. Jesse, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andy. It's so good to be here.
Well, it's good to see you again. I don't know if we've seen each other since we were in Wilmore, Kentucky, but I've seen you online. And here's part of why I've seen you online. My daughter this summer went to summer camp, and Jesse is a variety performer as a part of his ministry and calling. He is a juggler, and amongst other things that he does as well. But he's no just average juggler who's just going around as a variety performer. He's a juggler scholar, as he just completed his PhD in the last year or so, looking at the vocational direction that people have as variety performers. So Jesse, this is a high honor. And on top of that, he's also an adjunct professor at Ascent Seminary. So he teaches on youth discipleship and New Testament courses there. So Jesse, man, it is really a treat to have. You've done a lot since we last saw each other.
I have, and you as well. Yeah, it's exciting to see your face again. You age well. You look very similar to you the way you did 20 years ago.
Well, the gray hair in my beard doesn't make me feel that way, but there you go. You too, Jesse.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm interested. Now I knew, I remember being in seminary, and I remember seeing you juggle there, and I knew you were serving youth ministry at a Vineyard Church. I think
that's correct.
And I remember knowing that was your passion. And there were things about your life that stood out to me. You were one of the first people I saw, even in seminary, practicing the Sabbath. I always knew there was something distinct about you. But tell me, did you immediately after seminary go into juggling or variety performing?
I did. And it's funny just hearing you kind of talk about that historical trajectory of my life. It was something I was interested in, juggling, that is, as early as middle school. I learned how to do it as an 11-year-old when my friend could do it. So I wanted to learn what my friend could do. And it stuck, and I practiced, and I got better. And it was one of those hobbies that just grew and grew and grew because I was so fascinated by juggling in particular. And I eventually learned how to perform it. And I didn't know that 20, 30 years into the future of my life, I was still going to be doing it.
Yeah.
And that just happened to be the path that the Lord took me down, that not much has changed in terms of the things that I enjoy and that I'm passionate about ever since I was 11, 12 years old. And for that, I'm very grateful. But yes, that has been the main thing I have been doing since coming right out of seminary back with you back in 2007. I graduated from Asbury in 2007.
Yeah.
And I was at one of those, that's a crossroads point for a lot of seminary graduates. You know, you graduate and you figure, well, I followed this because I felt called to ministry, and that now it's like, what do I do with this? Where do I go next? And so I was at that crossroads, like many others. And I applied to a few churches to maybe work on staff at a church. And I was interviewing with a church in Cairo, Egypt, and
Wow.
rural Illinois. I mean, I was, because I was interested in children's ministry. So a lot of churches then and now are still looking. They're always looking for children's ministers. It's a big need out there. So I considered that path, but I also had this door open where I had met someone at a children's ministry conference who basically, books entertainers at Christian outreach events. And it's an organization called For His Kids. Okay. And they have a roster of entertainers who are Christians who many of us have some sort of a message or an evangelistic, bent to the content of our entertaining. So you have magicians and jugglers and clowns, whatever, doing an act, but at the same time, it's probably maybe at an evangelistic event, the act is done in a way that tells the story of the gospel or tells a story from the Bible. Doesn't have to be, I don't think good art or good performing has to have a particular biblical message explicitly, and that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, sure, I'm interested.
But that ends up, there's a lot of events that is their focus, and I had put together by that time in my life a program of a juggling show that kind of walked through the story of the gospel using the juggling as object lessons and object illustrations, and found out that a lot of churches were very interested in seeing what that was, and using it as an opportunity to reach out to their community. So all that to say that when I met For His Kids at this conference, that was another door that I was praying about. Like, is this an avenue I want to follow? And by the time I graduated, I felt the Lord leading me in that direction. And so I said, and it was a leap of faith, because you say, well, okay, I want to take this path of being someone who entertains at events for one-time events. You're kind of like you're self-employed. There's no guarantees. You're not employed by anyone. It's more of a independent thing, and you have to do everything is on faith that it's all going to work out. So I took that leap of faith. I felt like God was leading me in that direction, and they sent me to a church in Florida, and some vacation Bible school, I think, in the summer. And I did some messages for the kids, and I did my juggling act, and it was, I think, well received, and I enjoyed it. And that event was the beginning of my relationship with For His Kids. I guess the feedback from that church was, this guy's not a terrible juggler. So they kept booking me at other events, and it just grew, where I started being able to speak at many week-long summer camps, kind of serving as the camp pastor for the week. Which that was exciting, because it's not just a one and done show. Right. I get to spend a whole week with the campers and teach through the Bible or the theme of the week, and teach them memory verses. And all along the way, I'm using juggling and other kinds of tricks to engage the kids. And that's the language they speak. They speak the language of fun. So it's a way to interact with young people.
Okay, let me stop you. I want to come back to your story.
Keep going, but go ahead. Yeah.
No. So, okay, you speak the language of fun.
Yes.
That sounds like something you've thought through what that means.
Yeah.
Like when you engage kids, and this might be helpful for anybody working with kids, any type of youth, and honestly, like adults too, right? But talk me up. What do you mean by the language of fun?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've all been kids before. If you're walking on this earth.
Yeah, that's right.
I think most of us remember, and I know that, many people have hard childhoods, traumatic events in their childhood. Even so, I think we all still, whether you had a great childhood or not, we all understand that being a child, there's something about that time of our lives that is there's something fun about it. There's something amazing about it. And even if your whole world as a child was not fun, there's still a hope there. I think there's still
Interesting.
there's a dream that it, that something out there is better.
Yeah.
Than maybe what I'm experiencing right now in my life. A lot of these kids that come to camp, they're coming from very difficult, maybe home lives, home situations, and things going on in their lives and in their worlds. So, juggling or something fun, it helps kind of bring hope. It helps open up their eyes to something that can maybe distract them from, either whether it be the mundane or the dark that's around them in their lives. Like juggling and other things can bring joy. They can bring light. They can bring fun. And as children, again, I think we all understand the language of fun as children. Jesus saw it too when the disciples wanted to shoo the children away.
Yeah.
When the people were bringing the children to Jesus, and he said, "No, let the little children come to me, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." So
there's something about that, kind of like the argument from desire that often is attributed to C.S. Lewis, that we long for something else, and we want that type of joy, and if that's in us, like that's meant to be fulfilled, and even if it's not fulfilled.
Absolutely. And I think kids might have that a little stronger than us adults. That's why Jesus told us to have faith like them. There's something about them that is has more faith and more hope than us adults. It's kind of worn off a little bit in our lives, and so we need to keep looking back to the children to learn what it means to have fun, to have hope, have faith, and those kinds of things. Yeah.
Now, I had an opportunity to look at your doctoral dissertation, and I found it fascinating. This isn't one of the quotes that I copied and pasted for my own notes for this, but you quoted somebody who talked about the reality of, like, sometimes in performers, and this might've been a section like I was talking about the philosophy behind circus arts, but that it pushes to danger and darkness. You just brought up darkness when I asked you kind of to expound on that. And I thought that was interesting, that there's something like that as kids enter in to this language of fun, it also includes the reality of a world that might not always work out. Do you know what I'm talking about when I was talking about pushing like that?
Yeah. So if you study like circus historians and people who study the circus, one of the primary definitions of circus out there is it includes an element of either danger or risk of life and limb, and that's what makes the circus. And if you think about all the circus shows maybe you've ever seen or heard about or seen on TV. It's the lion tamers, the tightrope walkers, the people that ride the motorcycles in the big sphere. It's the acrobats. It's people that are flipping through the air, and if they fall, they could die. I mean, it really is, the circus really is people risking their life for the entertainment of other people.
Wow.
That's what makes the circus. There's really nothing else out there in the world that kind of defines itself by those terms. And here's again why I think there's a connection to children here.
Yes. Okay.
Children, their bodies are growing up. They're clumsy. They're still learning little children are still learning how to walk. They're learning how to keep their balance. They're learning how to be agile and coordinating with their hands and with their legs and with their eyes and their ears. They're still, as children, even us adults, we're clumsy still too. Like, we're all still learning, but again, kids are really, they struggle daily with those developmental things. And the circus, it gives you two things. The circus gives the children and adults these two things. It shows you these people with seemingly superhero powers, right? Like working on a tightrope or even juggling 7 rings or whatever. These look like superhero powers. And in some way it sparks some sort of hope, I believe.
Amen. Yeah.
That there is something better out there, that you can do the impossible, like it kind of shows you that. That's on one side of the coin. The other side of the coin are the clowns. When the clowns come in during the circus, they come in between the acts of superhuman feats.
Interesting.
So you have the lion tamer. You have the lion tamer do an act. And I'm saying that's kind of old fashioned to say that.
Yeah. Just it highlights the danger. right?
Yeah,
The reality of the
circuses
day.
of the past would use the animals. The circuses are thankfully are moving away from the the
Yeah.
animal exploitation. That's a whole other discussion too.
Yeah, sure.
Like I think that was the decline of Ringling Brothers and the increase of Cirque du Soleil. One of the big differences
Interesting. Yeah.
is the animals. Like Ringling focused so much on animals, Cirque du Soleil doesn't use animals. And
Yeah. Interesting.
that's a whole other discussion too. But let's
Sure.
let's go back to the dangerous act.
Yeah,
So maybe not a lion tamer. Let's take a tightrope walker. They'll do an act. Very next thing, clowns come out, and the clowns will walk on they'll pretend to be a tightrope walker. They'll imitate the tightrope walker, and they'll stand on something that's 2 inches tall and a foot wide, and they'll do this, and then they'll tip over and fall. Like to pretend that they just can't do it. And what that does is it brings relief to the audience. And the children especially. It brings relief to the audience to say, oh, there's someone who relates to me in this show, and that's the clown. The clown relates to me because the clown, I can't do it, but neither can the clown. And that's funny, because the clown is self-deprecating. The clown is could I say incarnational, right? Like the clown is connecting to the to the child and the audience member in a powerful way. And to extend on that idea of incarnational, I mean, like what Jesus did was foolishness. Like dying on the cross, that was foolishness to those. It was weakness to the Greeks, and it was foolishness to the Jews, right? Because they were looking for some wise philosopher or some superhero, to save the day from the Romans, right? But what Jesus did, dying on the cross, was both foolishness and weakness in the eyes of those who saw him, right? Paul says it himself, but that is like the strength of God. Is like so what Jesus did was very much, I believe, like a boss clown move. if I can say it that way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I love this. And you and I both, I think, had significant, we weren't in the same class, but we were both influenced by Ellsworth Callis. And for me, like I'm just, and now in part because I teach preaching, I think about him more, but he was so insistent on there being a storyline with tension and release. And of course, for him, he wants all that to be seen in the title of the sermon that governs the whole idea, right? And done without notes too. But that's another story. But nevertheless, like there's this direction within the plot. Like there has to be a plot implies this direction. And I would have never until this minute thought about this circus demonstrating those contours. Now, what is it? When you think about the way that gets expressed in your act now, so you're not a full circus. You don't have you're not a lion tamer and a clown.
Correct.
But and I know you do more than just juggle, but tell me about that, like how that works its way out in your particular gifting or your variety.
That's actually a really good question. And I have tried to navigate that as a one-man show over the years. And I think it's taken a few turns here or there, even as I've grown and learned and developed this whole narrative piece of storytelling and the performing arts.
Right.
So I do a little bit of both in my own show. Like I do a little bit of both the, if you want to call it showing off, there's a famous juggler with a book called The Art of Showing Off,
Okay.
I think it's Dan Holzman, if I want to give him credit, to give credit where credit's due. But it's there's parts of my show where I am demonstrating the juggling skills that I have. So I'll juggle machetes, or I'll balance a 6-foot ladder on my face, or I've juggled chainsaws, like I'll juggle 6 items, 6 rings. And those are thrilling and they're fun to do. But intermittently, I'll take the audience on a journey where I'll either pretend like I can't do it, and especially if there's little kids in the crowd, if you trip or fall or stumble over yourself in an attempt to do this amazing feat, that's where you get the laughs and honestly the connection. They feel human, like they feel like I'm human. And we're all okay. We're kind of together in this. And so I do both. Like I do both like successful, feats of juggling, but I also do parts where I'm kind of pretending to mess up and it helps them relate to me. Now, the benefit of that as a performer is that I can legitimately mess up or drop, which happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it keeps the audience guessing, like, did he mean to do that or did he
right.
not? And I just try to let them, as a performer, I can just let them guess, like maybe I did, maybe I didn't. And other times, like when I drop, I'll just look at the audience and I'll say, well, yeah, you can't boo me because you can't do it.
Okay, I have some like juggling questions I want to ask at some point, but going back to, I remember you having like pulling. I remember sitting in the library, but this is totally dating both of us here, so excuse me. Like, we had got good, solid internet at the library.
Oh yeah.
So like we often like be sitting there together. And I remember you pulling out, yes, I juggle. It's one of the things I do. And I don't like, how'd you move from the place of kind of liking the juggle in high school and college, seminary, to being able to do a full show? Like when did you make that pivot to being able to, because then you had that in kind of in your back pocket when you got for his kids, but I'm curious about that. Like, how do you make that transition?
Okay. So I do have to give credit to like the church environment in which I was raised.
Okay.
It was a church environment that was heavy on the fine arts.
Okay.
And so things like music and choir and the performing arts, they were all kind of held up as a way to worship the Lord. Like we worship God. The arts is one way in which we simply reflect God's glory back to Him as image bearers, and it is expressing, truth, beauty, and goodness through music, art, drama, and juggling, whatever it might be, whatever gifts or talents that we have all been handed. So it was a church that encouraged that and taught that and acted it out. So it was a larger church that I grew up in. And so it would put on like a big Easter production every year, like a dramatization of first century, Jerusalem and play out the Easter story. And the same thing at Christmas time, we would play out the nativity with like live camels and flying angels with the harnesses from the ceiling, all that stuff. And it was like big production number kind of stuff where they had the big lights and the costumes, and we had, hours and hours of rehearsals. So that's just all I knew was, fine arts and performing arts and being on stage. Like that was just I was thrust into that environment. I was in choir all through school myself and traveled with choirs, and music was a big part of my life. So playing piano, singing. I was in a barbershop quartet. It was we traveled and went to competitions. It was being on stage was just something I grew up on stage, I guess I could say.
Okay.
And my parents always saw that in me too. My parents always said that I never knew a stranger. I was comfortable on stage. And meanwhile, while I'm living this church life of performing arts, I'm also living a parallel life of learning how to juggle and going to juggling festivals. Like, so not Christian themed or anything. This is just the greater, wider world of. It's called the International Jugglers Association, the IJA. They have an annual festival every year with hundreds to thousands of jugglers, whatever number of people show up. But they have it in different cities around the country each year. And that's where some of the best jugglers in North America and now the world will converge. And you meet one another, and they have competitions and workshops and all sorts of things. So I went to a lot of those, regional and national. And I would compete in some of the competitions and it, made a lot of friends that I still have to this day. And it's at those conventions that I really learned, like, I guess you could say, the art of performing the skill of juggling. Like you can have the skill of juggling. Anyone can read the Juggling for the Complete Klutz book, or these mass produced juggling books out there, or watch it on YouTube, you can learn how to juggle. That's one thing, but it's a whole other thing to learn how to be a performer of juggling, and what it means to carry an audience through a 45-minute act all by yourself, of whatever it is, whatever your personality is as a performer, whether it's humor or virtuoso skill sets or a little bit of both. You kind of, jugglers and other related variety performers, we have to write our own stuff usually and put together our own content and create out of nothing something that is of enjoyable service to audiences. And you just find that sometimes by trial and error, and being in the community of people that do it. So it was that being around that community of people that did it that I got to learn and see others how to do it. But also, and I learned this in my dissertation when I interviewed other variety performers, to grow in this kind of vocation, you really have to just grind it out. And at the beginning, especially, just show up and do as many shows as you can for whoever will have you, for however much pay, even if nothing. That's how most of us get our start. I think a lot of musicians are like that too. You show up at any bar or restaurant that has, people sitting in the chairs, and you perform your act, and you do it for the love of the act at first, and you grow and develop as a performer. And eventually, hopefully, if you're passionate about it enough and it's your calling, you'll get good enough that people will start inviting you to their events, to come do it for them. And by God's grace, maybe make a living from it. If that's how the journey plays out that God has for you. So.
Well, let me ask you a couple of juggling questions, and then I'll get back to your story and then to the dissertation a little bit more.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm really, so what is what's your kind of like most virtuosic act or not act or trick? I'm sorry. I want to use like appropriate words.
No, that's fine. I understand.
Yeah. Or what have you worked on, and like what? Yeah, I'm curious. Because you mentioned like the chainsaws. I mean, that sounds pretty tough.
I was about to say the chainsaws. That's usually the first thing on people's minds when they find out I'm a performer, I'm a juggler. They usually ask me two questions, like if a stranger meets me on a plane or something, how'd you get into that, and can you juggle chainsaws? And
oh, really? So that I never even heard of it till right now.
Oh yeah, everybody wants to know if you juggle chainsaws. And there was a famous performer, Albert Lucas. He was a famous juggler.
Okay.
And especially, I think back in the 80s, he was real big. He would do the performing on ice. They like an ice skater, and he would juggle, and he would do fire, and he would do chainsaws. I think he was one of the ones that popularized the what do you call it? The myth that everybody has in their mind of the great chainsaw juggler.
Okay.
There may have been others before him. I'd have to ask a friend of mine, David Kane. He's a historian on jugglers. He would know better than me. But from my memory, I think Albert Lucas popularized the idea of the chainsaw juggler. So ever since then, a lot of people, when they hear about jugglers, they want to know if we can juggle chainsaws. So I would get that question a lot years ago. It actually bothered me that I said no whenever people would ask me that. It kind of bothered me because I was like, I don't want to let these people down.
Yeah, sure.
So I started looking.
I'm sorry, total ignorance. Do you turn the chainsaws on? Do you crank them up?
Yeah. So I started looking on the market myself for chainsaws that were small enough, that weren't like, big, heavy. I physically can't juggle, 30-inch bar chainsaws. Right. So I looked on the market for something that was manageable, weight wise. And I found these battery operated ones, like nowadays with these big lithium ion batteries on appliances and hand tools, yard tools. I found some of those battery powered chainsaws. It's a legit chain, and it cuts wood. And I bought 3 of them, and they're light enough. And I jerry rigged them. I added a dowel rod, like I screwed a dowel rod to them so I could hold the dowel rods.
Okay.
But I didn't jerry rig it so that they're inoperable. I just made it so I can, throw them in the air using the dowel rods. But the whole chainsaw is still there, and it's on, and the chain is on, and I can cut, a 2x4 with all 3 of them, and then juggle them away. And and I've done it. I practiced it without them on first.
Okay.
and then I practiced it with them on, and I would step back out of the way and let them fall on the grass if I got too scared. But I've only lost one finger doing it. Anyway, yeah, but it's
it's okay to use your standard jokes on me. It's okay. I have some standard jokes too. That one worked well.
Yeah, but now I can say that I've done it, and it's fun. So what's the most virtuoso thing? That might be one. I also just love juggling rings, like those big plastic rings. They just look really stunning. I enjoy watching other people juggle rings, and so I enjoy watching the rings fly above my head like a bunch of planets in orbit or something. It's just really cool. And so I can juggle up to 7 of those, and that's fun to just get them up in the air and juggle. That's what got me into it in the first place. It's the personal enjoyment of it.
Right. It's fascinating to see.
In the end, I don't do it to make a buck. Like that's not the primary motivation. Like this, it's for the love of it. Like artists do stuff because we love it and we're passionate about it. And if it brings joy and passion to other people too, then that's wonderful. And we'll do it for others because it's something you can share with the world. So
there's something, it's interesting as you're saying, you described that moment where you can see them flying above your head.
Yeah.
There's something amazing about the reality of our consciousness that is incredibly powerful. While I'm preaching, often, like while words are coming out of my mouth, I do find when I'm, prepared enough, real satisfaction in the kind of like the Eric Little type of comment, the pleasure of the Lord when I'm preaching. But it's amazing me that there are moments where I can think about my preaching while I'm preaching, and other things too. Like every now and then that could happen with music. I wish I could say it happened with sports, but I've never really that good enough at it. But nevertheless, like there's something about like I'm saying words now, and I'm thinking about how enjoyable this is, or I'm thinking about the person on the front row or the back row or something like that. And thinking about you, like while you're in the midst of, juggling, like you're thinking about like, this is a beautiful thing. It truly is a art that you have opportunity to participate in.
Hearing you say what you're saying, the thing that comes to my mind is that it's about chaos and order.
Sure.
There's something very satisfying about bringing order out of chaos, and that's what God does. He brings order out of the chaos of our lives and in this world. And juggling is, because of gravity and because of human clumsiness, juggling, if you just throw things up in the air, that's chaos, right?
Yeah, sure.
But if you can somehow learn the skill of like throwing them at the right times in a pattern and catching them and repeating it over and over again, when you learn that skill, you are bringing order to chaos. And when you get to do it with your own hands and see it happening in front of you, it is like you said, it's like I feel the Lord's pleasure. I feel His pleasure. When you get to be a part of that, bringing order out of chaos. And we all use juggling as a metaphor in our lives all the time. I hear people say it all the time, like juggling their family or their schedule or their work or whatever it is. We're all jugglers. And maybe that's why people also like juggling, because you're seeing a physical, literal manifestation of what we all sense deep down inside in our own lives and in our own worlds. We all feel clumsy and that we can't fight against gravity and we can't keep everything in order. So when you see a juggler, maybe it is a spark of hope that like, oh, there is hope in the world. Like it might be possible that my life could have more order than the chaos that I feel right now, because I'm watching this juggler right now. I don't know.
Oh, Jesse, that is good. And like, I love how you bring that in, like even like the idea of the circus and what draws us to the circus, what's drawn people to the circus throughout the centuries. And then even with juggling too, like I haven't thought about like, why is it? But that's it. Like there's something to that connects us to a bigger story. Now I'm interested to know, what is it when you go to these international juggling associations and there's
Yeah.
competitions. What is the extreme? Like what is the Michael Jordan or LeBron James of juggling doing? Like you're like, okay, we're all going to get in here and see this.
Yeah. I mean, but first of all, juggling has the skills of juggling have just exploded since I was a teenager, when I was going to a lot of conventions, when I had time, now I have a family, I've got kids, they're at school. It's harder for me to get out and go to a lot of these conventions that I used to go to. But what used to be amazing stuff and virtuoso stuff back in the 80s and 90s is now just standard stuff now. And like the skill sets are just mind blowing. Like when I watch these YouTube videos or Instagram feeds of great jugglers out there, they're just doing mind blowing things. And it's exciting for the art of juggling to see people pushing the limits and exploring the boundaries of the human possibilities of what we can do with juggling. So some of it it's not necessarily found in the sheer numbers, like there is something called numbers juggling, where people try to break the Guinness Book of World Records of how many objects to keep in the air at once. And honestly, I forget what the current record is. I think it's close to 12 or 13,
Wow.
In terms of like either what's called a flash or a juggle. A flash is when you just you throw them all up and you catch them in order. It's one rotation of the pattern. A juggle is if you can get all those objects in, through the pattern twice. So that would be like juggling 12 balls for 24 catches. But there's multiple jugglers that can handily juggle 9, even 10, objects. When you get into 11, 12, and 13 and above, you get into the rarefied air, of juggling. So that's like numbers wise, but then yes. But then you also have like artistic juggling. So you have this, it's kind of like performance juggling. They're not so worried about the skills of like how many objects you can juggle, but they're more worried about like the visual presentation of the juggling. Sure. So if you see some of this, it almost looks like ballet or the art of movement with objects. And they might only have 1 or 2 objects, maybe 3, but they're rolling pins around their arms and flopping them behind their back, and it looks very it's more like a dance, with the objects. And some people call it flow movement, and they'll use other things that flow and move. And there's many props out there that jugglers will use to kind of express our art in different ways. There's contact juggling. That's where you've got a ball and you roll it back and forth on your hand like this. It's not really a contact ball.
This is where you need the video, folks. Go to YouTube, watch on. Yeah. So do that again.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm actually not a very good contact juggler, but it's where you roll the ball on your hand. If anyone saw the movie the Labyrinth back in the 80s, with David Bowie, like they have him like rolling the balls through his hands like this. It's actually not him, it's a famous juggler, it's his hand doing it. But you kind of roll the ball in your hand, and some people can do it very quickly. I do mostly the toss juggling, like that's what I do. And I focus on toss juggling more than contact juggling or other types. But you have also everything from what's called the Diablo. It's like a Chinese yo-yo. You have flower sticks or devil sticks. You got cigar boxes. It's where you kind of manipulate them midair into different positions, and an endless number of other kinds of props that are even coming out more and more, of flow props and juggling props that variety artists, variety performers use. I forget the original question that led us.
No, that's good. I was wanting to know like what's the kind of like LeBron James, Michael Jordan, but I think you got there. That everybody wants to see what they're doing, maybe getting up to 12 and 13 and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm interested, as you're able to work through this with you've developed this skill, you've been picked up, you're working with for his kids, then this becomes the means for providing for your family. You and your wife have 3 kids. Mm-hmm. This isn't just like making money in the summertime. Talk to me about this, like becoming what you do.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can say that the Lord has provided miraculously over the years, for my family. I also sometimes I'll sell juggling toys at a merchandise table after my show. So I'll do my show and then I'll tell the crowd, hey, come check out my merchandise table after the show. All the proceeds go to the Feed My Family Foundation. That's what I tell you.
I need to start that one.
But really people over the years, I have found that people have been very generous to me in supporting what I do. It's kind of like when people hire me or bring me in to speak at an event or do something for them. I've learned over the years that that's their way of like patronizing the arts,
And that's a positive use of that word, patronizing.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. It's a positive use of being a patron of the arts, right? It's someone who, like back in the, what was it? The 1500s, in Italy, right? Was it the Medici family? Am I getting that right? Like they're the ones who funded the great artists like Michelangelo and Da Vinci. It was maybe not Da Vinci, I don't know, but the Sistine Chapel and the Michelangelo's carvings and not carvings, sculptures, of the Pieta, and you have this beautiful art telling the story of God, and they were funded by art patrons. And correct me if I'm wrong, someone might have to look this up. I believe it was the Medici family. I believe was one of the primary art patrons of the time that helped fund great art. You have that even today. You have art, foundations that support the artists. So every time someone brings me in to do my show or invites me to perform what I have, I see that as them. They're supporting me as an artist, and I am eternally grateful. It really is a blessing, and I don't take it for granted. And I'm not in it for the money, but it sure does help to pay for my heating bill and buy diapers for my little children. And it's everything is a blessing. I started out when I started doing this kind of work. It was while I was in college at Taylor University, and I would work almost every weekend and often midweek events doing juggling shows like around central Indiana and a little bit beyond. And when I started out, I actually kind of felt bad asking people to pay me, like because I loved what I did so much, and I was like, well, I don't know, just let me do my show, and I don't know, give me a love offering or a donation, or I'll accept anything like that. I really did go in with like this attitude of like, I'm just grateful to do what I do, and I'm not gonna demand like a fee out of you. And I did that for about 4 years, and and I'm so glad I started out that way, because I think it helped me for the rest of my vocational career up to this point, still kind of view what I do as like, it's ultimately not about the money. Like, I'm not doing it for the money. Now, there did come a time where I was doing it more often, and at different events where they wanted to know, like, how much do we need to pay you for this? And because it takes time, it takes work.
You're away from your family.
Yeah, exactly. So there comes a time in one's life where if you want to make a living out of it, there's got to be some sort of understanding that you got to make a living from it. But I think because I got to the point where my campus pastor at Taylor University, he saw what I was doing, and he was like, you need to charge people a fee. Like, like don't just give yourself away for free. And that really kind of stretched me, because I almost felt like bad. I felt bad taking money for what I was doing. And but again, over the years, especially because it's an art that I believe that I'm passionate about, and I've just learned that people do want to support you. If you're an artist, they want to bless you, and they want to thank you for the art that you're doing in the world. And
I've had to work through that this year.
I'm so thankful for that, and it's helped me change my mind about other artists too. Like, I see other artists out in the world, and I'm like, well, I want to support them, because they're they're doing art in the world. They're doing performing. They're putting it out there. Like buskers, street performers. Like I love dropping some money in their hat because I've been there. I've done that. I know what it's like and I know what it is. And I never want to see the busker go away from the world. I want to see them continue on. And so I will gladly, like support them because I have been supported so much over my life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I feel like when I was serving as a Salvation Army officer for about 15 years, I wasn't allowed to have any other source of income. That was a part of like the deal of being a Salvation Army officer. And I was only allowed to generally accept 2 opportunities for ministry outside of my appointment each year. Well, that all changed when I came to Wesley, and I never had charged. I remember like I did a pretty big event while I was a Salvation Army officer that I'm guessing somebody would get, a significant honorarium now for it. But I remember at the end of it, I was given a mug, a coffee mug, and it was actually a really nice coffee. I still I use it every day.
Yeah.
And it's and somebody said, "Oh, that's a shame that you're doing that." I'm like, "No, I'm not allowed to have anything. So to get this mug is awesome."
Yeah. It's a very special mug to you, I'm sure.
It's very special mug. But now, if I would have done that event now, like I would expect a sizable honorarium. But it's been interesting because now in a year of not being a local church pastor, I've preached more than I did in a local church. And so I've had people have asked me, and I've had to develop a cost. And I have that first a fee. And I had to calculate, well, what's the value to my family? What do I make? What am I losing?
Yeah.
And the first time somebody asked me and I gave them a number, I was like, I'd fear. It was really hard for me because me, I'm a preacher. Like I am doing this, but still I got to see the joy that people have in offering an opportunity to provide for you. Like provide for the person who's doing it. And I imagine that would be I'm sorry, I haven't ever been able to hire you myself, Jesse, but I would love to support you. Like,
yeah, no, I totally understand like what you're saying. And it's, one thing I learned in my dissertation research, I interviewed 30 Christian variety.
Yeah, go into that. That's good. Yeah,
sure. And these were deep dive interviews. So it was a qualitative research study. So it's not like I'm trying to do some quantitative thing where I'm trying to prove a theory. That wasn't the methodology I used. I used what's called qualitative research, where you kind of dive deep into how people make sense of something in the world or make meaning out of something. So I was talking about it, exploring how they make meaning out of their own vocational callings in life, particularly their work as variety performers. All that to say that one subject that came up across all 30 interviews, like every last one of them brought up money. Like money was a big topic, but it wasn't the main topic. Like it wasn't the end all. It was, so the way I put it in the dissertation is that money is for a variety performer, money is everywhere, but it's not everything. Like it's not the main thing. It's not the driving force of what we do, but it's still everywhere because it's how we operate on this earth. It's how we exchange. It's how we barter. It's how we support. It's how we live. It's how we pay for providing for our families, whatever. It's always there, but it's not the driving force. And so what am I trying to get at? It was just neat to hear their stories of how money was something that was, they never chased after it.
Right.
But it always showed up. Like what they were chasing after was actually following their calling and being true to their art and true to their calling, like faithful to their art and faithful to their calling. And when they did, according to them, it's like the money simply followed. It showed up in miraculous ways, or just in ways that they weren't expecting, in ways that supported what they did. And that was encouraging to see.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You have 4 basic ideas that kind of you found consistent throughout this, and it moves from journey, joy, community, and oblation. Am I saying that word right?
Yep.
And that's a new one for me. And I saw that came like you took that from some social sciences.
Yeah.
I'm really fascinated by that. But like I think probably it fell in that area where you talked about this journey. Like this is a part of it. Like we have to if you're going to do this, you're going to have to figure out how to be away from your family at certain times and travel and be in odd places and deal with weird things with people hosting you in funny ways and all kinds of stuff like that. So tell me about those areas, those 4 areas, and why that's significant. Because it could just sound like, oh, well, this is just kind of 4 points, but they were things that you pulled from your interviews.
That's correct. Yeah. So I, I transcribed all the interviews and got tons of, like textual data from that, word for word transcribing. And it was exciting. It was almost like, doing an inductive Bible study, right? Like you have to look at the text and you have to draw out from the text, not read into it. So I'm drawing out from the text of these interviews, like, what is it that these people actually said and how are they making meaning of different topics and their own callings? And those were the 4 major themes that arose to the top in my analysis of that data. As you said, that there's a journey to one's calling. Calling expresses itself in the form of joy for these performers, like both internally and as an outward expression towards others. They do it in the context of community, both being like supported and encouraged by a community around them and contributing to a larger community, like of their vocational community.
Yeah, sure.
And then finally, the oblation. It's an old-fashioned word that means a sacrificial offering. So
interesting.
And it was. And that came straight out of social science. Abraham Maslow, the
hierarchy of needs.
Like the hierarchy of needs. So what he found is that the people who had achieved in his studies what's called self-actualization, he found that pretty much to a T, all those people that had reached self-actualization approached their own life work and labor as a calling, and he said like an oblation, and like as if their work was something that they poured out on an altar of sacrifice unto the Lord, unto a deity, because that it's oblation is a religious term. It's used in the context of making a sacrificial offering to a deity. So whatever religion you're in, it can apply to different religions. The term is very broad. So, but as Christians, right, like we see, what Jesus did was an oblation,
sure.
Like he's the sacrificial lamb. But what we do is even the work of our hands, it's hard, it's toilsome, we sweat by it, it can be difficult, it's not all fun and games all the time. Even jugglers and circus performers, it can be tough. And yet what we're doing is we are taking this work that we've been gifted with, and we're sacrificially offering it, not just to the world, in service to others, but ultimately unto the Lord. Like it's that's what makes, I believe, a calling, is something that you're taking and you're offering it back unto the Lord. He's the one who gave us those gifts and that calling in the first place.
Yes.
And then we funnel it through our own life expression for ourselves and for others. But then we direct it right back up to God by kind of directing all that we do unto him. Colossians 3:17, whatever you do, whether in word or in deed, do it all, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. And when that's happening, when you're giving that type of offering, that's the best of your skill set. I imagine I could come to your show and I might not know it when you're not as sharp, but you do. Right? Like, sure.
And maybe I could. I guess you could drop something, but I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, that there is an old saying about jugglers that, like, we are one of the types of jobs where when you do mess up, everybody sees, right?
That's right.
Yeah, it's like referees or umpires in sports, right? They're invisible if they're doing everything right, but once they mess up, it's very, very visible. And so jugglers are like that too. We are held to a very high standard, and with our claims of being able to juggle things.
Yeah, I guess it could show maybe not just in juggling itself, but in the act, like your transitions, like when I don't know what would make it hard, but there are things about in any art form, and that this, if you think of sports as an art, but as teaching as an art. So I know when I'm when I'm in the right zone, when I'm doing the right, like students might not realize that I wasn't as organized at this point, but I can kind of play it off. Not saying that happens on a regular basis. I hope not, but we can try to put ourselves in that place where the oblation of it, like we want to offer the best that we can for the Lord in this, because like what we're doing is utilizing the gifts he's given us for that higher purpose.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
This is so interesting, Jesse. What are some of the things that people don't ask you that you think they should?
Oh man.
Like what is it that people don't know about even being on the road or being a variety performer?
Yeah.
I already asked the obvious question, like, what's the hardest thing you've ever done? But tell me about.
So here's something that comes to mind. Sometimes I think what people don't understand, if someone is not a traveling performer, there's some things that they just I don't think they will ever fully understand. Like that we as traveling performers, we all get and we all understand. Like you can put me in a room with some other traveling performers and we would all connect and relate on, like, as we talk shop about what it means to be on the road and be performing and, day after day and night after night and sleeping in this hotel and then that hotel and getting on this airplane and, having a delayed flight and a canceled flight, and you show up at a show and you give it your all. And then, afterwards, like your adoring fans all want your attention and they all want your signature and they all want to talk to you all night long, but, you just want to go back to the hotel room and collapse.
Yeah, sure.
And so there is something that I think we as performers, we do understand about each other that, like you can't be everybody's best friend all the time. People see you on stage and they feel this deep connection to you because you're talking to them and or maybe you're on a big screen because it's a big event and they're putting your face on a big screen. And all of a sudden you become like a celebrity or a star in their mind. And then afterwards, like they all want to talk to you and be just as close to you as you were to them, on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I believe there is a level of responsibility for those of us with the privilege to be on stages. We do carry a responsibility to connect and engage with people, on a human level and be friendly and respectful, and be thankful, that for the opportunity to do what we do. But there's a limit, it's like there comes a point where we have to say, I need to go home now, or I need to go be by myself now. Like I need to, I can't give everybody in the audience, an hour of my time after the show to talk and chat. I'm a human. I need to get some sleep. Right.
Yeah.
So you gotta balance things like that. You want to be gracious and kind and thankful, but you also, at the end of the day, sometimes you have to like shut the door and say, I'm so sorry, I got to go now. Like I have to wake up early and catch another flight.
Yeah.
Most people understand, but
do you have a rider? Do you have to have like all brown M&Ms when you show up or something like that?
No, I try not to be, I try not to be picky. I try to, I do have a rider, but I try to just keep it to the necessary items that just help the show go well and the event go well. That's what I want. I want each event to be a success in terms of serving the goals of the event and serving others in the process, and ultimately serving the Lord.
Yeah, I remember hearing a comedian talk about. Sorry to interrupt you. A comedian talking about like the importance of some of those functional things that need to be in place. Like, and you might not need this, or maybe you like it, but like having a spotlight like that, like for a comedian, there's something about the way they direct the audience's attention to them is important for the act to function. And some people, oh, you're just a prima donna or something like that. But it really is important to have those things in place. Or like, you show up someplace and they don't have a good microphone or any number of things.
Yeah. I carry my own microphone around.
Interesting.
The headset, the receiver and everything. And I can plug it into most any sound system. But thankfully, a lot of the events I go to, most people, they like the sound and the tech crew and the teams, like they're great people, and they want it to be a successful event, and they do a great job most of the time, of hooking me up. But each event's different. And because I go to different ones, I do have to like start over again with each one. Like, okay, let's do a sound check. Let's make sure the lights are where, they need to be. Let's play my background music. I don't carry around a roadie crew. Like I don't have my sound crew that comes around with me. So I have to learn how to be, I have to learn how to adjust to a new group of people every single time I do a show. Wow. And I've learned over the years to be humble about it. I think early on I was a little bit of a diva about it. Like everything's got to go my way and you got to do what I want to do. But I've learned, maybe I'm older now, that, you know, often these events that I go to, the person running sound, they work with a lot of performers too. And they've seen a lot of good, bad, and ugly. And I've learned that sometimes you just be friendly and respect people and be nice to people, and that they'll be nice back.
Yeah, sure.
And they'll be on your side. And so I try to be humble and thankful for the great sound crews that are behind me, because I want them to be on my side, not against me. They have the power to mute me, if they don't.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things I do, like my podcast is called More to the Story, and I often ask that question. So, is there more to the story of Jesse than just juggling in ministry?
Well, sure. So I mentioned I play the piano. I still play the piano as my side hobby that I don't perform on stage. Piano is what I do in the privacy of my own home. So I like to play the piano. I like to sing. I like bird watching. I like going on hikes with my family. We like to explore the national parks. We've been to a number of national parks across the country.
Which ones have you been to recently?
So like during COVID, we made it out to Grand Canyon and Zion and Shenandoah National Park here in Virginia. We've been to Crater Lake out in Oregon.
Oh, wow. I want to get there.
And not just the national parks, but also national forests and, national conservation areas. Like Assateague Island out in the eastern shore of Virginia, White Mountain National Forest up in New Hampshire. We just went there this past summer. America really is a beautiful country. Like you don't need a passport to see the world. It's a beautiful, we have so much, beautiful landscape here in this nation. And I guess as a traveler, I've grown to learn that, there's a lot of beautiful things out there under the National Park Service. To explore.
We just did this summer, we did Badlands, Rushmore, Custer State Park, Yellowstone, Tetons.
Wonderful.
And dabbed our toe into Arches. So we did a huge, we've become a national park family.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah. Once you get the bug, it's like you want to just check off the whole list or something. I would love to make it to Alaska and make it to, the many parks that are up there.
But you have some baseball cards behind you too.
I was going to get to that. I also collect baseball cards. My, Cal Ripken Jr. is my man. He's
there you go.
He's the, two-time MVP, World Series champion, 1983, and the Iron Man, who played more consecutive games than any other player. He broke Lou Gehrig's records. So he's, he's
your best card.
Yeah, no, best card. The best one. I'm still looking for it. It's actually his tops traded rookie card. I don't have it. I used to have it, but when I was in college, I sold my baseball card collection to buy an engagement ring for Sarah when we got and I wanted to marry her. So I sold off my baseball cards it was right after college. And I got the engagement ring and she said yes. So I came out ahead in that deal. But about 15 years into our marriage, I hadn't thought about baseball cards in a while. And we stumbled upon an old baseball card shop in Ohio on one of my juggling trips. And we went inside and I looked around and I could smell the smells again of and the baseball cards and the bubble gum and all that stuff. And there in the case was not a super expensive card, but it was a memorable one for me, but it was one of Cal Ripken's. The Don Russ of 82. And I saw it in there and I think it was like $14, not a very expensive card. And she saw me, salivating over it, and she was like, go ahead and buy it for yourself. So I bought it for $14. And when I brought this home, this one card was the bug that got me back into collecting, like all these years later. So I started trying to amass a little bit of what I used to have before I sold it all, to buy her engagement ring. But the beautiful thing is, like, she kind of started it, like she
Yes,
got
that's right.
into it, right? She gave me permission to go ahead and buy this for myself. And it's almost like, she's redeeming, my old hobby that I'd sold off all those years ago, with her blessing. So that was the fun part. But I don't know, some of his rookies are some of my favorite cards. And
so I'm going to call upon one of my listeners. I'll see if he's listening now.
Here's autograph ball. That's probably one of my favorites.
Is that Cal Ripken?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's
awesome.
one of my favorite pieces of memorabilia from him. So
that's where cards have gone now, is towards like giving pieces of jerseys and autographs. My friend, he's a listener to this podcast sometimes, is Jonathan Fitzgerald.
Yeah, there's his jersey right there.
Oh, there you got it. Yeah.
They're called relic cards. It's very religious sounding, they're relics.
Interesting. Well, I have a Ryan Sandberg rookie card. That's my player. That's cool. And I have a Walter Payton second year card. I did sell them in my last move. I used to have so many. I sold a lot of them, but I kept a few of my favorites. Yeah, Jesse, it's been so good. Can you tell some people how they can find you if they want to book you or just find out more about what you're doing? Yeah.
Should I give my home address and my social security number if they want to find me?
Definitely social security for me and bank account.
Credit card number.
Please. Yeah.
Venmo. No. Okay. So the best place to start is my website, which is jessejoyner.com. And it's there's no I in my name. It's JESSEJOYNER, jessejoyner.com. Some people put an I in my name. That's usually how a female Jessie spells her name. So like male Jessies are usually JESSE. And if you're wondering, we have 3 kids. Our third is a boy, and we named him David. So he's David's son of Jesse. You see what I did there?
Oh, there you go.
You like that?
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. So anyway, very biblical. But jessejoyner.com. And from there, you can link to my YouTube channel. It's Jesse Joyner on YouTube. And I've got how to juggle videos and highlight reels from my shows, that kind of stuff. If anyone's interested.
I hope they will be.
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. I'm not on TikTok or Snapchat. I can't keep up with all the newest and greatest stuff. It's, you know what? I think it's, for jugglers, for me personally, at my age, it's just just find your art and go do it well. You don't need TikTok to make yourself famous. At least I'm not interested in that so much. I just want to juggle.
Yeah. Oh man, I love it. Well, I'm so thankful, Jesse, for the way, God has taken this gift that you have and you're using it for the kingdom to tell this bigger story. And I love this. Kind of the idea of the podcast is to get a little bit deeper, go, have more to the story behind what's going on with juggling. So it's great for me too, just to connect with you again. I hope we can do more in the future.